is an international speaker. He's going to be talking about the power of self-awareness, harnessing the science of you. This is going to be a great conversation, great talk. I hope you guys enjoy it. Please put your hands together. Warm welcome up to the stage. Start the applause from right now for Sandro Formica.
Is there? Yeah, I'm so good. Okay. Hello. Let me ask you a question. What is self-awareness for you? And do you believe you are self-aware? When I hear people talking about self-awareness, they start mentioning their strengths and weaknesses. And I'm not sure if it's just that or a little bit more. And challenge yourself by asking yourself, how do I know who I truly am? I'll give you truly shortly my story. 18 years ago, I was defending my dissertation at Virginia Tech. And as soon as I was done, I rushed out of the building. I took my car. I went to the first airport in Roanoke. I bought the first ticket to go back home, which was Italy. And I arrived in Rome. I rented a car, and I rushed like, I was driving like a typical crazy Italian, right? To my mother's house. I saw my mother. I entered the house. I saw my mother, and I said, Mom, I got a PhD in a foreign country. And you know what? I am the first Italian actually to have a PhD from the United States in this specific discipline. Back then was hospitality and tourism. And my mom looked at me and she said, oh, so wonderful, son, so wonderful. However, the knowledge and education of your father cannot be matched. So, you understand how I felt. But that was probably one of the best days of my life. Was certainly the first day of my life, because up till then, what I noticed is that I spent my entire life trying to be accepted or approved of by my mother. And I know, I see lots of faces, and I know that almost all of us live most of our lives trying to be approved by someone close to us or approved by our community or our society. So then, really, I had to get rid of my mask. There was no other way around it. I didn't know who I was. I was in my 30s. I didn't know who I was at all. And I just knew that I got a doctoral degree in a field I couldn't care less about. Why? My father was a teacher first, and then ended up being the executive for tourism in central Italy. And guess what? I got a PhD in tourism. So that was part of my previous life. I didn't know who I was, and I decided to find out. So for the next 18 years, I relentlessly looked into growth and self-introspection. That's all I had. At the same time, I had to continue to be a professor of tourism. So that was a very interesting time, because as I started to be clearer and clearer, then I had to make a decision. I either come out and say, guys, this is not me, or I continued, because that's easy. And you can fake so well what you are doing. It's amazing. I was one of the top researchers in the United States in tourism. And actually, I got my green card for my exceptional ability to be a researcher and publish in tourism. So there is a time in your life where you have to make a decision. Either you're going to be true to yourself, or you are going to be miserable for the rest of your life, maybe in comfort, because I could have continued to be a tourism professor for the rest of my life, or I had to honor who I truly was. Are you following what I'm saying? Okay. Are you honoring who you truly are? So I decided to do something. I went to 35 schools, and I met with over 5,000 students, and I showed them what I call self-science, or the science of you. So I asked them how many hours they studied from first grade to 12th grade. And they told me they studied about 20,000 hours. So we spend most of our first part of our lives studying. I asked them also, how much do you remember of those 20,000 hours? In percentage, guess what? 10%. So they actually remembered 2,000 hours. The other, 18,000 hours were totally lost. And I said, why? Why are you spending your life trying to learn something that you don't remember? They said, we don't use it. So then I realized, oh my God, what we are studying, it's all about something that is not ourselves. It's something other than ourselves. So we truly believe that it's much more important to learn something that is not us. That learning about yourself is not really relevant. I said, what is it? Because to me, what is normal, it doesn't look very normal. And what is not normal sounds normal, which is the science of you. Would you want to have learned something about you in high school or middle school? Yes or no? Yes. Why not? Why can't we be as important as geography or science? Why don't we study the science of us? And people say, what is the science of us? Well, I started working on that because I did the work on myself and I wanted to see if I could do something. So I proposed this course called Personal Empowerment at Florida International University. And thank God they went through the academic senate, they passed, and I started teaching it. And to no surprise, that is the most popular elective course at the Biscayne Bay campus at FIU. So the point is that we are all thirsty for this. Why can't we offer it? And people say, this is not a science. It's not a science. Truly, truly is not a science. Let me share with you some of these elements of self-science. And these elements were all discussed during these 2 days here. Let's talk about your values. Many of the students do not know their values. They say, nobody has ever asked me about my values. And then I'll ask, okay, what about your needs? Because as a matter of fact, every action you take is geared towards the satisfaction of a need. So do you know why you act in a certain way? They say, no clue, no clue. Are you kidding me? This is something we need to know. There's tons of science that talks about that. And what about your talents and skills? We have learned a lot about them in these last 2 days. Are you cultivating your talents? Do you know your talents? Because many of them don't. They said, I was told to take this major so that I can continue and I can find a job. I understand that, but what about your talents? Well, you know, those talents would not bring me money. Are you sure? Are you sure that you will be successful by denying who you truly are? How is it possible? How long can it last? Then you will go through a midlife crisis, right? Because sooner or later, something has got to give. And can you actually create competencies to support your talents instead of competencies that have nothing to do with your talents so that you become stronger and stronger? Communication. I have lots of things to say about communication, but just know that employers 93% of employers are much more interested in people who communicate well and hire people based on their communication level than the right degree. Isn't that amazing? So these are all those areas of study or disciplines or topics that I'm teaching in my self-science course. Why did I come up with them? Because I had to go through them. My emotional intelligence was 0. And actually, let's talk about that, because that's important. When we talk about emotional intelligence, we all agree that's super important, right? And obviously, is more successful than IQ to predict your success. It's actually twice more successful in predicting your success. And it's twice more important in predicting your success than technical skills. So emotional intelligence is super important. Now tell me, how many hours of emotional intelligence have you had at school? So then I asked my students, I said, can you please tell me, maybe you didn't have to learn it at school because at home you were taught emotional intelligence, right? So I asked them, listen, what was the first emotion you expressed when you were at home? The first memory you had. And guess what? What did they tell me? What were they doing? They were crying, right? They were crying. I said, okay, good. So you remember the first time you expressed an emotion. Okay, what did the grown-ups tell you? Don't cry, very good. That's your emotional intelligence, 0, right? Not only that, they taught you to repress your emotions. So there is that part of you, the emotional self, that is dead. So that part of you is not available to you anymore, but we were born that way by design. Are you questioning your design? Are you questioning that this is something that we have, but we need to get rid of? Because this is what we were told. Imagination. Now, imagination created all of this. Would you agree? How can we create a building, the lights, the chairs, and your clothes, if we don't see them here first, right? How is it possible we don't teach this? I see so many quotes by Einstein saying, oh, imagination is more important than knowledge. And if you want to measure your intelligence, you have to use imagination, okay? But people quote this, but they don't do the work. So again, I asked the students, how do you use your imagination? And they say that basically they use it by default. And what do they imagine by default? Worries. Events, future events that are going to make them suffer. I said, isn't that crazy? You have this beautiful tool that is imagination, that to me is the basic element that distinguishes us from animals, and this is how you use it. Now, animals dream like us, but they do not have intended imagination. They cannot intend it, but we can. So I'm wondering, why don't we use it? Without imagination, there is no growth, because we can't imagine our better selves, right? How can we? Only by coincidence? So, just to give you an idea of science, you say, come on, imagination cannot be tested. Absolutely not correct. In medicine, in psychiatry, in sports, there are hundreds of academic articles that talk about imagination. I'll give you one, because I think it's so significant. There is this doctor, Dr. Bennett. And in California, he's a doctor and he's a surgeon. And what he did was very, very simple. He does abdominal surgery. I'll give you a couple of cases, actually. The first one, before putting people asleep, he would tell them, listen, after the operation, don't be surprised if you start thinking about your preferred food. And you will hear your stomach growling and lots of activity, and you start thinking about this food, and it's wonderful. So now he tests those who heard this extra sentence compared to those who did not. And guess what? The first group has 50% less post-operational problems. 50%, which means that after the operation, they recovered 50% better. It was retested with the same results. The other one that is stunning, always from the same doctor. He, before operating, he said, do you know that your body is so smart, that when we start cutting, removes the blood from the areas that have been operated, that are being operated, and then when we finish the operation, the body will send all the blood possible to irrigate those areas and make you heal as fast as possible. So then, again, puts people asleep, and guess what the result is? That the people who heard this compared to the people who didn't actually saved 40% of blood. They had 40% less blood loss. They were asleep. Do you understand that? They were asleep. How is it possible? How is it possible? So my point is this, and you can look at the work of Ellen Langer at Harvard. She has done tons of work on really harnessing the power of imagination. Imagination is everything, So my point is, let's use it. Let's use it properly. Let's use it to create the life we want. That's what it is. Why don't we? Why don't we? Why do we imagine by default things that we don't want in the first place? Then life purpose. Needless to say, we had tons of conversations. I give you some data about that. The people who have a clear life purpose and pursue it, they live up to 7 years longer. They are much healthier, and they feel much better. Obviously. Now think about someone who doesn't have a purpose, wakes up in the morning and says, oh my God, another day. Look, it's raining outside. If I don't get a couple of coffees, I cannot even function, okay? And the other one who has a life purpose wakes up and says, oh, I can't wait to pursue that. See, my life purpose is really to have self-science, the science of you, to be taught in all schools of the world. Will I be able to achieve it? I don't know. But if I reach 50 countries, do you think I would be upset? Right? I would be extremely happy. All I'm trying to do is to make people aware that your inner environment is as important as your outer environment. To me, it's more important, as a matter of fact, because without that, you don't function. Think of any successful person you can think of, any leader you can think of, it was because their inner environment was much stronger than their outer environment. That's why they were able to change, and they were able to change the world. Are you following? Yes. Okay. So my point here is, what are you doing now? Because when I teach executives, only 10% of them can write their life purpose when I give them 1 minute. The others can't. And think, without a life purpose, you are like driving a car, not knowing your destination. That's the truth. Why are you dispersing all your energy that way? So I created this textbook, I believe is the only textbook on the science of you in the United States. It has 150 exercises. It's not a textbook to read, it's a textbook to live. Okay? It's your life companion. What I'm saying is, if you study the self and you do not put yourself on the spot, you won't learn anything. Do it experientially. Do it experientially. Even come to my classes. I welcome students who are not students, if you want, and you can be part of the class, and I will be happy to have you. My point here is start doing the work, because if you work on yourself, there will be more being. What my students tell me at the end of the course is I'm happier. I'm happier because I know myself better. I know the self I am becoming, not the self that I thought I was. That is exactly where I was when I was into tourism and hospitality. I worked on the self-awareness that relates to who I'm becoming, not to what I thought I was, and that's a different world. Thank you.